Some people are shaped by time. Others are shaped by pain. There are people who smile every day, yet carry battles no one else can see. They've learned to hide their scars so well that the world assumes they've had an easy life. But behind that calm face is someone who has survived things they never talk about. The truth is, the people who have been through the most rarely tell everyone about it. Instead, their experiences quietly change the way they think, trust, love, and live. So if you've ever felt different, these 10 signs may explain why. Sign 1: You find it hard to trust people. One of the biggest signs you've been through more than most people is that trust no longer comes easily. There was a time when you believed people's words without question. You gave your trust freely and expected honesty in return. But after being disappointed, lied to, or betrayed, something changed. Now you don't let people into your life so quickly. Not because you hate people, but because you've learned that trust is earned, not given. You pay attention to actions, not just promises. Some people think you're distant or guarded. What they don't see is that your caution was built from experience, not fear. You've learned that protecting your heart isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Because when you've been hurt enough times, you stop trusting words alone. You start trusting consistency, honesty, and the way people treat you when they have nothing to gain. Sign 2: You stay strong even when you're falling apart. One of the clearest signs you've been through more than most people is that you've learned how to keep going, even when you're breaking inside. People often look at you and say, "You're so strong," but they don't know how many nights you spent fighting battles no one ever saw. You've learned to smile through the pain, to show up when you feel exhausted, to carry responsibilities, even when your heart feels heavy. Not because it's easy, but because life taught you that giving up was never an option. Your strength wasn't something you were born with. It was built through every disappointment, every loss, and every challenge you survived. Because sometimes, the strongest people aren't the ones who never fall apart. They're the ones who quietly put themselves back together, again and again. Sign 3: You overthink everything. One of the strongest signs you've been through more than most people is that your mind rarely stops thinking. You replay conversations. You analyze every little detail. You wonder if you said the wrong thing or missed something important. To others, it may seem like you're simply overthinking. But often, your brain is trying to protect you from getting hurt again. After enough disappointment, it starts searching for danger before it appears. You notice changes in people's tone, small shifts in their behavior, tiny details that most people would never see. Not because you're negative, but because your experiences taught you to stay alert. Overthinking can be exhausting, but beneath it is a mind that has learned to survive difficult moments. Because sometimes, people who think the most are simply the ones who have been hurt enough to believe they always need to be prepared. Sign 4: You feel older than your age. One of the clearest signs you've been through more than most people is that you've always felt older than your age. While others were enjoying a carefree life, you were carrying responsibilities, solving problems, or dealing with challenges that forced you to grow up too soon. Life became your teacher long before you were ready. Every difficult experience added another lesson, another layer of wisdom, and another reason to see the world differently. That's why you often struggle to relate to people your own age. Your experiences have changed the way you think. You value peace over drama, depth over small talk, and genuine people over popularity. You didn't choose to grow up so quickly, but because you did, you now see life through eyes shaped by experience, not just age. Because sometimes, the people who seem the oldest aren't the ones with the most birthdays. They're the ones who had to become strong long before they were supposed to. Sign 5: You apologize even when it isn't your fault. One of the quietest signs you've been through more than most people is that you say "I'm sorry" even when you've done nothing wrong. Not because you're guilty, but because you've learned that apologizing often feels easier than conflict. Maybe there was a time when disagreements led to pain, rejection, or emotional distance, so your mind adapted. It began apologizing just to keep the peace, even when the blame wasn't yours. Over time, you started carrying responsibility for other people's emotions. You felt guilty for things you couldn't control, and without realizing it, you put everyone else's comfort before your own. But here's the truth: being kind doesn't mean taking the blame for everything. Your feelings matter too. Your voice matters too. Because sometimes, the strongest thing you can say isn't "I'm sorry." It's "This wasn't my fault." Sign 6: You crave peace more than excitement. One of the strongest signs you've been through more than most people is that you no longer chase excitement. You chase peace. A quiet morning, a a calm conversation, a place where your mind can finally rest. Those things become more valuable than loud crowds or constant drama. After experiencing enough stress, chaos stops feeling exciting. It becomes exhausting. You've learned that not every battle is worth fighting, and not every opportunity is worth the cost of your peace. People may think you've become boring or distant, but the truth is, you're simply protecting the calm you've worked so hard to find. Because when you've lived through enough storms, peace no longer feels ordinary. It feels like one of the greatest gifts life can give you. Sign 7. You notice small changes in people. One of the clearest signs you've been through more than most people is that you notice the little things others miss. A different tone of voice, a forced smile, a delayed reply, or the silence that suddenly feels different. While most people only hear words, you pay attention to emotions. You can often tell when someone is hurting, even when they insist they're fine. Not because you can read minds, but because your own experiences taught you what hidden pain looks like. You've learned that the deepest struggles are often the ones people never talk about. So you notice the details. Because once upon a time, you wish someone had noticed yours. Because sometimes, the people who see the most in others are the ones who know exactly what it feels like to hide their own pain. Sign 8. You help others even while you're hurting. One of the most powerful signs you've been through more than most people is that you still choose to help others, even when you're hurting yourself. You listen when someone needs to talk. You offer comfort. You encourage people to keep going, even on the days when you're struggling to do the same. It's not because your life is easy. It's because you know what it feels like to face pain alone. And you never want someone else to experience that same loneliness. Your kindness wasn't created by comfort. It was shaped by hardship. The compassion you give to others comes from the wounds you've learned to carry. Because sometimes, the people who give the most love are the ones who know exactly what it's like to need it the most. Sign 9. You rarely talk about what you've been through. One of the deepest signs you've been through more than most people is that you rarely talk about your pain. Not because it didn't hurt, but because some experiences are too difficult to put into words. When people ask if you're okay, you simply smile and say, "I'm fine." Not because everything is fine, but because you've become used to carrying your struggles in silence. You don't want sympathy. You don't want attention. You've learned to keep moving forward, even when no one knows what you're carrying inside. The strongest battles are often the ones no one else can see. And sometimes, the people who smile the most are quietly fighting the hardest battles, because real strength isn't always loud. Sometimes it's waking up every day, carrying invisible pain, and still finding the courage to keep going. Sign 10. You keep moving forward no matter what. The greatest sign you've been through more than most people is that no matter how many times life knocked you down, you kept moving forward. You faced disappointment, heartbreak, failure, moments that made you question everything. And yet, you're still here. There were days when giving up felt easier than trying again. But somehow, you found the strength to take one more step, then another, even when no one was cheering you on. Every challenge left a scar, but it also made you stronger. Not because pain is easy, but because you refused to let it be the end of your story. Your past may have changed you, but it didn't defeat you. It taught you resilience, it taught you courage, and it reminded you that no matter how difficult life becomes, you are capable of surviving far more than you ever imagined. Because sometimes, the strongest people aren't the ones who never break. They're the ones who keep rebuilding themselves. Every single time life tries to tear them apart, your pain didn't end your story. If these signs describe you, remember this: what you've been through may have changed you, but it didn't destroy you. Every challenge taught you resilience. Every disappointment taught you wisdom. Every scar tells the story of a battle you survived. Don't let your past convince you that you're broken. Sometimes, the strongest people are simply the ones who had no choice but to become strong. Now I want to ask you, which of these signs do you relate to the most? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your story might remind someone else that they're not alone. If this video spoke to you, please like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell for more psychology and self-improvement content. Because sometimes, the people who have suffered the most become the people who inspire the world the most.